Welcome back to the weekly podcast digest of the 33 and Up Club. If you're new here, I'm Hannah, your host. I will take you through what I've been listening to this week. I try to curate some thoughtful and relevant podcasts for your enjoyment. So let's get started. This week on the podcast digest, I listened to HeHe Stewart at the Birth Lounge. I actually ended up listening to 2 of her episodes. She's prolific. She's got so much out there. I've really been enjoying it. I'm hedging because she does call herself a radical, and I think she is indeed radicalized as far as her thoughts on what birth should or could look like. But I think we need radicals. I think the pendulum swings, and we need those people. So I have been listening. I haven't needed as much salt as I thought I would, to be honest, but I have been enjoying, and I think she makes some really, really good points. So the first episode I listened to from HeHe was episode 451. It's called Medicaid Coverage for Doulas. Is it really a good thing? She brings on fellow doula activist and birth photographer Leslie. They have a great conversation about this. And going into the episode, I was like, yeah, what could be bad about doulas being paid for by insurance? What could be bad about more women having access to this tool? And ultimately, what they say is doulas are supposed to exist outside of the institution because they're there to serve their client, and it's important for them not to be beholden to any institution. And by making them part of the system, we're actually robbing them of their power and their magic. And then they also point out that what healthcare insurance or what Medicaid is going to reimburse a doula for is a fraction of what they would be able to charge privately. And if a doula were to take that on, would that mean that she then has to stretch herself thin and provide less quality in her care so that she can provide quantity so that they can put food on their table? What does that actually mean for doula practice? And she does have a suggestion for a solution. She thinks that it should just be a government stipend for every birth, every person who has a baby, every baby born, that just covers X amount of dollars, and you can take that towards your doula. She goes into more nuance in her episode, so check it out. I found it really insightful. And something they talk about in the episode is how the patriarchy is so broken, and it's an example of masculine energy that is wrong. And after talking with Jess Timms in episode 2 about how the masculine and the feminine exists in all of us, I really loved this point. And they go on to say that people are afraid of powerful women because they're afraid of what they're going to do with that power, because they imagine that a powerful woman would behave like a powerful man does, and how that's just not the case. And then I happened to try watching on Netflix Ladies First with Sacha Baron Cohen and Rosamund Pike. And it's exactly this. It's what would happen. It's like the gender swap. Women are in charge and men are the second-class citizens. And ironically, this perspective is all from a man's perspective. So it's about Sacha Baron Cohen. So it doesn't pass the Bechdel test. Anyways, that's a sidebar. The point I wanted to make about this was, in this version of the imagined matriarchy, women are perpetrating all the same transgressions on men that are daily perpetrated against women. So I just thought it was really funny. Like that, I had encountered both of these thoughts in the same week, and then I couldn't get through Ladies First. So if you watch it and you find it redeems itself later, let me know. The next thing I listened to was the self-care unit. The episode is called Debriefing and How It Can Be Done Well. I loved this episode. Honestly, I could just hang up the mic right here. They said all the things I wanted to say, all the things that need to be said about burnout, and how asking nurses to show up to the bedside completely devoid of reactions or emotional responses to very emotional things is actually a huge disservice to everybody, not the least of which the healthcare provider. And they go on to talk about how this career is inherently full of trauma. Full stop. It just is. And we need systems in place to manage that. Not like, it shouldn't be like a crisis response, like, oh no, all these people are not okay. It should just be baked into it. Like, okay, we're going to put people in a situation where they see tragedies, trauma on a regular basis. So here's what we have set up to manage that. Like it should just be baked in with your employment experience. Like, you see bad things, you get therapy. I'll let them talk about it. I really enjoyed it. It's on the self-care unit. I'll put links in the show notes. And then I did go back for more with HeHe Stewart, and I listened to a re-air. It's technically episode 445, but it's a re-air of episode 248. It's called Neurons with Dr. Jazz Robbins. This was just a fun listen. It was cool. I loved how they talked about, one of the things that Dr. Robbins says is that when you practice kindness, your brain sees you practicing kindness, and then your brain feels like the kindness was practiced onto you. I really loved that. And they talk about more, everyone just keeps circling back to this, or maybe it's just what I'm looking for, about healthcare providers being human beings and tapping into that humanity when caring for others. And again, I'm just going to make the counterpoint, but just the aside that we don't leave room for that in healthcare. We don't leave time, we don't leave energy, we don't leave space to let providers be human beings. We have a patient load and medical tasks to accomplish and fact-finding missions if you're the diagnostician. So much as we would love to sit there for the feelings of it, that takes time. And time is a luxury and it costs money. And when I say our healthcare system is broken, this is what I mean. Just putting that out there. Okay. And then the last thing I listened to this week was called the PMDD Pep Talk, PMDD and ADHD, why iron is the missing piece. I will say it was heavy on the science. I loved that. It is about functional medicine. And I really think functional medicine is the future. And in its current iteration, it's really only accessible to people of means. And that makes me very sad. Healthcare in its current form is putting out fires, is responding to symptoms, is managing chronic disease or devastating diagnoses. It's not there to optimize or achieve wellness. It's there to remove disease. But there's a big gap between I'm not sick, but I'm not okay. Definitely with mental health, and I've talked about that, and I'll keep talking about that. Okay, so one of the things she talks about is how in functional medicine, they have different benchmarks for labs. I don't know much about this. I haven't done research. I haven't looked at actual papers, though she does reference a few. I'm speaking from a place of relative ignorance. I will say that. So one of the things she mentioned is that the functional threshold for iron, she says it's about 40. And if you're in the healthcare sphere, you know that the norm is like, for a woman, is like 12. That's fine. 12, your iron level's 12, you're good. That's fine. But she says that's just so false, especially in someone who might be a little neurospicy and have different deficiencies for building dopamine specifically. Anyways, I learned a lot, I think. It does need a little bit of fact-finding for me. Just as I hear myself talk, it might not like stand up to the veracity of evidence-based practice. I don't know, maybe it does. Maybe I'm talking out of my butt and she really does have data to back up what she's saying. She sounds like she does. I just haven't done the research. Point being, I'm so sad. Every time I open my eyes and looked more deeply, I'm just so tremendously saddened by the state of medicine and healthcare today. And you can only do so much. With the resources that you have. But I actually just did another interview today with Kate. She's amazing. Can't wait to air it. And one of the things she said was, speak the future that you want and like really believe it. And then your sorcerer's powers will make it happen. So here I am. I will work in a healthcare system that truly gives people wellness and all the help that they deserve. So cheers to that. If you're enjoying these weekly podcast digests or the podcast in general, if you don't mind taking a second to rate, just because that helps more people see it. If you have any comments, I would love to hear them. If you want to come on the podcast, I would love to have you. I would love your thoughts. I am doing this in an echo chamber, which is nice. It's been therapeutic for me and really helpful for my own well-being, but I would love to know if it's helping someone else. Alrighty. Well, that's all for now. I'll see you next week for the weekly podcast digest. And don't forget to look out for this week's interview. Thanks for listening.